All right, Justin. So, kind of a crazy story. So, I just got back from vacation with the family. We went on a Disney cruise. And mind you, side note, I am not a cruise guy. I really don't even like cruises, but I went on a Disney cruise last year and just fell in love with the ultimate five-star experience. So we did it again. I had no idea that I would do another one this soon, but we're on our second Disney cruise and I'm out on the veranda talking to my daughter, and she like accidentally spilled something off of the side of the veranda from our cabin. And she was so worried, like she was like, "Oh no, I'm polluting the ocean," just kind of joking. And I was like, "Well, they have cameras watching you, everything you do, so Disney's gonna see." And it was just kind of this running joke. And then she said, "Well, what would happen if somebody jumped off of this balcony into the ocean?" And I said, I don't know, but the boat would probably stop immediately because they do have cameras like watching everything. I said they probably have sensors, so the boat would probably stop immediately and they would send a rescue boat out to get you, like these little yellow boats that they have on the side of the ship. And it was just kind of this conversation that was going on because kids are curious. And lo and behold, when we got back from the cruise, Justin, my mom gets a news article that a little girl fell off of the balcony of her veranda of a Disney cruise ship in the same area where we were traveling. And her dad immediately jumped off the balcony to save her. It's in the news. You can look it up. He immediately jumped off the balcony to save her. And the cruise stopped and they sent the yellow boat out and everybody's fine. But it made national news. And this had to be happening at around the exact same time that I'm having this conversation with my daughter. And we had no idea any of this was going on. So that made me think, like, this happens so many times in my life where there are like these synchronicities and coincidences. I'll put in air quotes because I don't think there's any real such thing as a coincidence. But it's almost like the universe has these frequencies and waves. And it was just so eerie to read that article and know that this actually happened when we were just talking about it. And it was on a Disney cruise. It could have been on any cruise line. But it was on a Disney cruise and in the same area, same path where we were. So I bring that up to ask you, Justin, do you ever notice things like that in your life? Synchronicities, coincidences, things like that? And what do you think they mean?
Welcome to King Moves. In chess, the king moves one step at a time, but that single move can change everything. Each week, we explore mindset shifts and simple actions that could lead to the next breakthrough in your business and life. I'm your co-host, Ethan King, from Atlanta, Georgia, USA. Entrepreneur, TEDx speaker, and best-selling author of Wealth Beyond Money.
And I'm your co-host, Justin King, no relation to Ethan, from Cape Town, South Africa. Entrepreneur, speaker, and business growth strategist. Our journey crosses continents and cultures as we think out loud, challenge assumptions, and uncover the small moves that create big momentum. Welcome to King Moves. Let's start the conversation.
It's a good question. It's a great share. But I'm so on the fence about assigning meaning to synchronicities or coincidences because at what stage do we draw a line around assigning meaning to anything and everything? I suppose the first thing that comes to mind is LinkedIn posts. And bear with me for a second. I'll connect the two stories. But LinkedIn posts, and we're all guilty at some stage of playing the game, but most LinkedIn posts are, this happened and I learned this business lesson from it. Or this thing happened and I learned this lesson from it and let me share it with you. So we can manufacture meaning from things when it's not actually there. So that's why I say I'm on the fence around, should we allocate meaning to it? Or is it just an act and a random act and purely a coincidence, a random act that means nothing, but wow, that's interesting that thing happened at the same time, or that thing happened in a similar way. It's interesting that person was there at that particular moment, but it has no deeper meaning than that, no deeper impact. It's not going to change anything else other than call it an interesting fact. I'm on the fence at the moment. I'm on the fence.
But have you observed this in your life, or can you think of any times when you've noticed it happening and it almost feels a little bit eerie, and then you're kind of like, huh? Like it almost seems, I'd be cliche, but like a glitch in the matrix, or like, okay, this can't be real. Like this is like, I mean, there've been times when I've been across the world somewhere and bumped into someone who like lives down the street, like things like that, and you're 1,000 miles away from home. It's like, why are you in the same place at the same time? And I swear stuff like that happens to me all the time. Does that kind of stuff ever happen to you?
Absolutely does, and I'm searching deep in my memory right now because there's such a good example. Something happened the other day where I was like, that is uncanny. A little bit, like you've said, a little bit weird, a little bit creepy. How is that possible that happened at this exact moment? So there's something, but I can't remember the story, and I'm trying to think of, how about this? Well, maybe an example, and this is going to past relationships example. My ex-wife and I, when we first met each other, we just kept bumping into each other everywhere. That was it. It was just almost a coincidence after coincidence of meeting each other at random out and about the city. And that's when you start then applying, is there meaning to this? Is there a greater force bringing us together? Or is this just, that is really weird. I've bumped into the same person quite a few times and that's it. So that would be a really interesting and a good example of where these coincidences have happened. And one of the first that pops into my mind.
So I'm reading this book. Have you heard of this book called Reality Transurfing? It's this really mind-bending book. It's kind of like we have different. So the premise of the book is that we have different lifelines, which are kind of versions, infinite versions of ourselves, and that we can step into these different lifelines at any time, and it essentially boils down to the choices that we make. But it's a long book too. I mean, I'm listening to the audiobook. It's like 36 hours, and the actual physical book is super thick. I think maybe 700 pages. But one of the things, what they say about these synchronicities is that it's a mirror into another lifeline, and it's kind of a clue that you're in alignment with this other lifeline. Like, so the whole goal is to step into the lifeline of the life that you want to live, the version of you that you want to live, and that the synchronicities that you notice are a reflection or an adjustment to this new state, and they're not accidental. It's kind of like a sign that you're in flow. Of course, this is all, it's pseudoscience, right? Nobody can really prove this stuff, but it really, I notice these things more and more. And there's also, if we do want to look at the scientific part of it, there's the reticular activating system in your brain, the RAS, which is the feature that we have where you notice things that you see. Like if you go and buy a car, if it's a white Tesla, and then all of a sudden you see white Teslas everywhere, it's just your brain subconscious helping you notice it more. Part of that in there. But, it's just sometimes I think there's, and maybe this is me assigning meaning to it, like we talked about on a previous episode, but I really do feel like there's no such thing as coincidence. There's even this quote that I heard. It's like, coincidence is God's way of staying anonymous. When God does something in your life and he wants to stay anonymous. And I really believe that, but I'm trying to figure out, when these things happen in my life, what action should I take? Or maybe just don't take any action. Maybe just notice it and be like, that's interesting.
Do you think this is one of those instances where there's more correlation than causation? So the correlation being that you are an individual who is very aware and self-aware. So awareness being your environment, self-awareness being how can you impact your environment. The fact that you notice a lot of these synchronicities, these coincidences, these serendipitous moments, whatever we're wanting to call them, is that maybe more correlation to how aware and self-aware you are? And off the back of that, the way that you're able to apply that, let's call it a lesson or an understanding, or be curious about the fact, and that in itself brings a deeper meaning to the event, rather than the fact that it was really interesting that this thing happened and I thought about it or heard the same story or my daughter was saying the same thing. Maybe there's something along that line of thought.
Yeah, there could be something there. Like the action that I take after noticing this thing, because I've assigned a certain meaning to it, could lead to different things in my life. That's quite the possibility. This is something I'm exploring further, and I'll give you just a few things that I found, because we get into like quantum and metaphysics and things like that, a little bit of neuroscience. So here's what Carl Jung or Carl Jung? I can't remember which way you pronounce it. But he says that he calls it a synchronicity, a meaningful coincidence. It's when two or more events are connected, not by cause and effect, but by meaning. And it feels random. It's not random. It's a pattern that feels tailored for you. So he says that synchronicities suggest a link between your inner world and your outer world. Then there's the neuroscience angle, which says that your brain is just detecting patterns, because that's what we do. It's a security mechanism. That's the reticular activating system. It's kind of like your brain's spam filter. So it lets in signals that align with your current focus, whatever you're focusing on, and it filters out the rest. And then with the quantum and metaphysical take, you have alignment of frequency. So it's kind of like life is a giant playlist. And when your internal energy matches a particular song, you start hearing that song play externally. By the way, that happens to me all the time too. Like I'll be thinking of a song, or I hear a song in my head, and then I'll hear it like 5 minutes later. Does that ever happen to you? It's kind of a weird thing. But then again, maybe I just heard it in the distance.
That doesn't happen to me. I'm wondering again. I'm just trying to make the links here. So I read a book called The Explorer's Gene recently, and one of the things that we try to do as human beings is minimize uncertainty. And that's why we like to see what's around the corner. A good example of that would be, as a kid, one of my favorite things, if we went for a walk on a rocky coastline, is I had to run far ahead of everyone to see what was just around the next corner, what was in the next rock pool. I could never just say right here is enough. It was always, I have to minimize this uncertainty of, am I missing something better, or is there something that I'm unaware of around the corner? And that's how we are hardwired, minimize uncertainty. And that's part of why this book explains that we start to explore. And some people they haven't necessarily nailed a specific gene, but some of us are wired to want to explore more than others, reduce this amount of uncertainty. And again, I'm wondering if there's a link now between I've heard a story, I've seen something, or I've experienced something. I'm hardwired to want to reduce uncertainty. So now you look for, I don't want to call it confirmation bias, but you look for other stories or other opportunities that are going to back up what you've just experienced or give you a level of information that helps you reduce uncertainty. So those would be the coincidence. I've just spoken about this and now I see it happen. Okay, that's reduced my uncertainty because I've got proof of this actually happening, or how it happens, or what happens. So right. I don't know. I might be grasping at straws, but as you're speaking, that's one of the things that have come to mind for me.
Well, I think you're exactly right, and that's what I want to leave our listeners with as a king move. I believe that these synchronicities often appear in our lives when we're at a crossroads or faced with a big decision, or we've clarified a goal. We're thinking that we want to make a decision about something, and maybe we're in a heightened emotional state, but we aren't sure. And then that synchronicity kind of gives us confirmation. So for me, I'll just take it like this. I had a theory when I was talking with my daughter about what happens if you jump off the boat on a Disney cruise. I had a theory about what would happen. And then this article that came out proved that I was right, because it actually happened to this guy with his daughter. Exactly what I said was going to happen. So I'm going to take it personally as confirmation that whatever decisions I'm struggling with, I need to trust my gut, because inside I'm right about that decision, even though that decision is unrelated to the Disney cruise thing. So and I would encourage anyone listening to this, if synchronicities happen in your life, like, drop us a comment, let us know, shoot us a message, shoot us an email, and let us know if you experience this too, because I'm completely curious. But I believe that they're like breadcrumbs nudging you to pay attention in life. Or, if you're religious, maybe it's God tapping you on your shoulder to pay attention.
That's a wrap for today's episode of King Moves. Remember, in chess, like in business,
one right move can change everything.
Take today's action step, make your move, and build momentum.
If you found value in today's episode, share it with someone who's ready for their next breakthrough, and don't forget to subscribe so you never miss our weekly conversations. Until next time.